think that it's important to note that there is a statute in Florida that says that I'm supposed to say something along the lines of "Hello and welcome to the Evolutionary." My name is David Knox. I am still your host. How did this happen? Anyway, I am so excited to be here, and this is a year of firsts. If you're joining me right now, thank you so much for joining me. Just a note, I actually can't see. Oh, I can see uh, notes that are coming through from the YouTube interface, but I can't see notes that are coming through from Facebook. So if you're on there sending notes, I'll check them later in the show when I have a moment to look away from my notes and do that kind of thing. So that said, thank you for joining. I have titled this thing Nested Consciousness in the Holographic Fractal Universe. That probably sounds a whole lot more fancy and intellectual than we're going to get today. This is going to be a pretty relaxed, informal discussion. I'll probably say a lot because I don't have this scripted out. If you are a fan of the solo casts, I'll just tell you right now, I've probably told you before, I script those out. They're way too dense for me to remember what to say. So I write it, I script it out, and then I record it. And then I pull something hopefully intelligible out of the wreckage of those recordings. Anyway, this is going to be just an informal chat, and we're going to talk about a few cool things. Let me take this off of there. There we go. And the first thing that I want to note, though, is that we are, this has been a year of firsts. So I've been doing this show for about 4.5 years, and just in 2024, there's been a slew of firsts. The show, the feeling, the energy of the show had gotten kind of stagnant. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do with it, and so the first thing that I did was I took some time and built the website, and that was an interesting and focused endeavor. Anyway, I have the website up since probably January for the first time. Also in January, we did our first live stream and after party. That was super fun. We started focusing more on video content. I started the YouTube channel for the first time. In terms of guests, we've had our first death doula, our first men's group facilitator. We had our first musical guest. That was with our first live stream back in January. That was Demir. That was fantastic. You should check it out on YouTube if you didn't see it. Check out all these. In fact, they're all on YouTube. And we had our first intergalactic, interdimensional being named Zazar. And Zazar was channeled through by an amazing woman named Marilyn Gavicki. Thank you, Marilyn, for being on the show. Hope you're doing well. And next month, we're going to have another first. That's right. It's going to be our first international show, our first international live stream and after party. And I'm very excited about that. The incomparable Molly Mandelberg will be joining us, but date is tentatively set for the 30th of this month. And of course, once we firm that up, I'll send some stuff out. But Molly will be stateside, West Coast, in fact. But Katie and I will be over in England, specifically Southern England. More on that in a few moments. Okay, so one of the things that I like to do on the show that I think is very important and kind of a nourishing part of the show to do for anyone who's listening is good news and fresh perspectives. And I started doing that when we changed to the live stream format. And of course, the reason is because, you've got an infinity of information, quote unquote, information coming at you from all sides. And the vast majority of it is just dog shit. Did I mention this is, there's going to be swearing in this episode? Yeah, there is. So I like to take a moment and pull out some actual good news, something that could potentially be impactful for humanity, or that shows that we have the ability to move in the right direction and that kind of thing. And, this is not the bake sale or the fundraiser or the whatever. It's potentially very impactful things. And so the thing that I have this week for you is called, in the Good News and Fresh Perspectives category, is some good news. And what happened is back in 1987, there was a global agreement called the Montreal Protocol. And it was an agreement of most of the countries in the world to phase out 100 chemicals that were damaging to the ozone layer. And they did this because 2 years earlier, scientists found out that the ozone layer had been badly damaged and was depleting very quickly. And this is a problem because the ozone filters out some rays, a lot of rays from the sun that would kill us, that would kill biological life. It would just devastate life on Earth to not have it. And because of the chemicals we were using, we were depleting it. That was obviously a big problem. And anyway, 27 years later now, reporting from the scientific community is that the ozone layer is on the mend and on track to be back to 1980 status, which is evidently a lot better than it was and a lot better than it is now. It should be back to that status in just a few decades. And of course, that's good news because the ozone is awesome and allows us to be here and live. And also, it's an example of humanity's ability to learn from our mistakes and to make real changes in how we operate and to move toward a status of harmony with our environment. So that's part of the evolution of humanity, and there's an example of the fact that we can do this. Cool. Okay, so what I want to talk about right now is I want to talk about some mystical, magical stuff, Southern England, crop circles, and our lovely departed friend Nadi Hana, who left her body on March 30th of this year. And we found out on March 31st, which was, of course, Easter morning. Nadi has been very present for us, for me specifically, recently, and I'm going to tell you a couple of reasons why. First of all, I want to talk about some interesting things and some synchronicities that occurred that now and that are kind of still occurring, and I'm not really sure how it's going to work out. So I'm going to tell you some stories. They're really fun. But spoiler alert, there's not a big punchline. There's not a huge reveal where we suddenly go, oh, that's what it was all about. That's why it happened. We may never know why all this happened. It's part of the great mystery. But in the beginning of 2022, Katie and I moved in with Nadi Hana, a friend of ours that became a very close friend of ours because we lived with her for a year and a half. We were housemates in Sedona. It was a lovely, lovely place that we lived in with a beautiful yard. And one of the things that we found, I had already known this, but it kind of deepened my understanding of it, is that Nadi was very into crop circles. Very into crop circles. I would call her a crop circle aficionado. In fact, I've called her that many times. She did presentations and gave talks on crop circles. And she had books around the house that had all of the pictures of all of the crop circles ever in them. And during that first year that we lived there, Katie had a dream one night. And I hope she doesn't mind me sharing this. I did not clear this with her earlier, but she had a dream, and the dream was roughly that there were aliens. There were a couple different kinds of aliens. There was a kind of a more standard, middle of the fairway kind of alien. And then there was a mantis being, and they showed her a crop circle, a specific crop circle. They showed it to her, and the mantis was like transposed on top of the top crop circle and kind of coming in and out of view. And so she wakes up and she tells the dream to Nadi. And Nadi, being a crop circle aficionado, goes and finds a picture of the crop circle that she thinks it is based on Katie's description. And sure enough, Katie says, positive identification, that's the one. And it is a crop circle, a very famous one known as the Julia set. If you don't know what it is, have a look on the interwebs and it'll tell you. And so the Julia set is going to come into play in a moment, but the first synchronicity was that if Katie had had that dream under any other circumstances, she had it before when we didn't live with Nadi, when we didn't live with a crop circle aficionado who had all of the records of all of the crop circles in the last 20 years in the house, we would never have identified that. We wouldn't know that it was the Julia set, but we did. And so we have this interesting encounter with the Dreamtime aliens and the crop circle, the Julia set, and that facilitated by the presence of Nadi in our lives. And so now I want to talk a little bit about Southern England. So Nadi had never been to Southern England. She had never been in a crop circle. She loved them so much, but it was she was researching and loving them from afar. And she drew them. She was into drawing sacred geometry, and she had several crop circles that she had drawn over and over and over again. And her contention was that in doing so, sacred geometry, in drawing sacred geometry in general, but specifically crop circles, would change you somehow. It would do basically some rewiring in your consciousness. And she did a lot of this. And much of it was crop circles. And she got the opportunity, the summer, or in the fall, in the springtime, while we were getting ready to leave, she got the opportunity. She got invited to go to Southern England. They were going to go to a conference that was pretty heavy in crop circle presentations. She was going with some people who were kind of in that line of work, putting together presentations and stuff for various not mainstream things. And she was hedging for so long on this. She was going back and forth and, do I want to take the time out of my schedule? She's a very sensitive person. So she was going, well, do I want to go run the gauntlet at the airport and be around all those people and, the expense and all of that. And she was hedging. And then one day I said to her, so Nadi, it's okay. I had been trying to talk her into going and it wasn't working. And I said to her, Nadi, actually, if you don't go, it's totally cool because you can just hear about it from Katie and I, because we're going to go traveling the world. We're going to make it there at some point. We didn't have plans to go there yet, but I said, we'll make it there at some point. So you can just hear about it from us. And she just goes, well played, David. And the next thing you know, she confirmed her plans to go to Southern England, and she got her plane ticket and booked everything up, and she went. And so right after we left Sedona, she went to Southern England and spent 3 weeks down there, and she got to lay in a crop circle, and it was a very, very exciting, exuberant, nourishing time for her. And I'm very, very pleased that she got to do that before she died. And by the way, I'm taking credit for convincing her to go. I'm sure there was a lot of other things that convinced her to go, but I would like to think, well, I saw it in her face. She was like, oh man, I can't have that. Yeah. Anyway, so she goes to Southern England. Turns out that we end up taking a hard left turn when we started our travels. We went to Portugal for 6 weeks. We were going to go to Southeast Asia. Instead, we went over, it was summertime, we went over to Southern England, and we took a bunch of house sitting gigs on the Isle there, on the main British Isle. And we started in Southern England. We had a car. We were in Wells, which is a cathedral town in Southern England, about an hour from Stonehenge and Avebury, and right next to Glastonbury. And we had a great time rolling around. And the crazy thing that happened there, and of course you have all of the information that I just gave you, recall all the information I just gave you about the Julia set, Nadi, and crop circles, is we went to the Crop Circle Museum. And the Crop Circle Museum is it's a pretty low-key affair. It's kind of there's no one actually manning it. It's basically a barn that was repurposed into a crop circle museum, and they have a lot of information and cool pictures in there. I enjoyed it very much. But when we were there, it's in a place called Honey Street, by the way, which is so small it could not be even considered a village. It's so dinky. There's like 10 structures in the whole place. So we go in there, and we have with us a dog, the dog that we're sitting, and a lovely dog named Kiza. And Kiza pulls me, doesn't really pull when she walks, but she wants to go over, and she takes me over to this stairwell that I didn't know was there. And it turns out there's an upstairs, and she leads me assertively up the stairs, and we go up the stairs. She leads me over to a poster, a big picture with, a story on it. And it is a picture of the Julia set. That's not all. It's a picture of the Julia set in the context where it was. I don't know if any of you know this, but a lot of crop circles in southern England show up right next to ancient sites, ancient burial grounds, or there'll be the white horses on the hillside, or the burrows, or the stone stuff. So that's very common. And in this particular case, the Julia set is right across the street from Stonehenge. Right across the street from Stonehenge. And why is this amazing, aside from the fact that the dog pulled us over there? Well, it's amazing because I think it was that morning, and it doesn't matter if it wasn't, but I think it was that morning, Katie had an intuitive hit. You see, we had been looking into Stonehenge and seeing if there's any way that we could get into Stonehenge, into the ring of stones. Because if you just do the regular tourist ticket, during regular hours, you don't get to go in there. There's a rope, you're 50 feet away, you take your pictures, and you're out of there. You see it, basically from one angle and from a distance. But then Katie had got into some research on it and found out that they do this thing where before hours and after hours, they take one busload of people in the morning and then one in the evening, and they let them go inside the circle for an hour. And so of course, you can't get those tickets unless you book them 9 months in advance. It's booked out. It was booked out till March, and this was August, I think. And so but she had also read that sometimes people go and cancel. And so she hadn't really checked it, but she had heard that, and she woke up early one morning, way earlier than she intended to get up, and had an intuitive hit. And she grabbed her machine and she went on, and sure enough, there were tickets. She grabbed the tickets. We got to go spend an hour inside of Stonehenge. And then we go to the Crop Circle Museum, have this. We hadn't gone in yet, but she had got the tickets. She had that mystical experience of the intuitive hit, and then there they were. And then the dog pulls us up and shows us Stonehenge, and right across the street, the Julia set, the same one that the aliens showed her in her dream a year before. And so we're, the hair's kind of standing up in the back of our head, and this is amazing. And we go that night and have dinner at the Barge Inn, also in Honey Street, just across the way. And the Barge Inn is like the center of the crop circle world. They have crop circle stuff all over the place. It's where people go to basically talk crop circles. And so we go there and have dinner. And on the way back, we are driving down a road, a country road in southern England that is impossibly dark. It is so black. We can see nothing but exactly what our headlights have lit up. And the road is very narrow, and there's foliage very close in from the sides of the road. And I don't know if that's kind of a thing in southern England. There's all these roads where they're just really, really kind of in an alleyway. So we come around this corner, and up ahead, we see something in the road. And my first impression was that it looked like an albino meerkat looking the other direction. I thought, what the heck is that? There's nothing else in the road. There's no carcass. There's no nothing. There's just this thing. And so it doesn't move. We get all the way up to it, come to a complete stop, 15 feet from it. It's sitting there in our headlights. And at that moment, after we come to a complete stop, it slowly swivels its head around 180 degrees, by the way. And it turns out that this thing is an owl, a white owl. And after it looks at us, it turns back around and unfurls its wings slowly and takes 3 big bats of its wing, whoosh, 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 and it's gone into the forest. And the hairs are sticking up in the back of our heads again, and we go, I don't know what that was. But the very first thing both of us thought of was, I can't wait to tell Nadi about this, because she gets it. She understands. And we told her, and she was just elated, and she was very excited. And quite convinced that that was, the play of the great mystery, that the universe was playing with us. And what does it mean? Don't know, still don't know. But I would like to say that this has all come back around because a couple of things are present right now for us. One of them is that Nadi came and visited me in a dream 2 mornings ago. And I was on a ship or something like that, and I had just pulled myself out of a hole. There's some symbology there. I lifted myself up, and I was on my knees on the deck, and Nadi showed up out of nowhere. And I was so happy to see her, and I put my arms out wide. And in real life, when I used to hug Nadi, a lot of times, she was 5'1", and I'm 6'4", and she would make me stand with my legs really wide so that I would lower my torso down so that we could hug properly, right? So it wasn't one of those weird backbreaking things for her. And so I said, you know what? I said to her, I'm just going to stay down here. I'm already on my knees, and it'll be kind of even us out, which it did. It was, she was a little taller than me, but she came over in the dream and she hugged me, and I wrapped my arms underneath hers and I hugged her, and I just bawled like a baby. Oh my God, I sobbed so hard in this dream, so hard that I woke up crying in that dream. I'm not a crier, by the way. This may be one of the themes of this particular talk, but I'm not a crier. And so Nadi came to me in my dream, had a nice visitation. By the way, when I was crying, she said, "Oh, I knew this would happen." So the other reason this is relevant is that we're going back there tomorrow. We get on a plane. We're going back to southern England. We have a sit in a little place so close to one of the stone circles. In fact, the largest stone circle in the world, called Avebury Stone Circle. And we got to spend a couple of days there last year and absolutely loved it. And I had actually said out loud, can you imagine if we got a sit in Avebury? Because there's actually some structures in the stone circle. It's that big that there's a little almost village, not quite. Well, we got a sit about 4 miles away, I think. It is extremely close, and we're going to get to spend some more time there. So we're going, and it's 30 miles from Stonehenge and all of this. So it's a very interesting synchronicity, all of this, and it's clearly not done playing out yet. I don't know how it's gonna play out, or what the message is or is going to be, but it is at very least fun and intriguing to be in kind of the flow of this banter almost with the universe. It feels like the higher consciousness is playing with us, and that's super fun. All right. So then a couple days ago, we got onto a call with Bill Gruber. There was another synchronicity that led us to this moment right now, and that happened this spring. And that synchronicity was that we had already planned to go to Sedona. We were going to visit Nadi and some of our other friends, and we did that in May, at the end of May. Obviously, Nadi wasn't there. Her body wasn't there, but it just so happened to coincide, our trip happened to coincide with Nadi's family showing up in Sedona to spread her ashes. And so that was an amazing synchronicity, and we got to be part of that, and that was phenomenal and nourishing, and we'll never forget that. But we also got to make friends with her father, Bill, and we get to spend some time with him sometimes on Zoom. And so we did that the other day. We got on with Bill, and we had a nice conversation. But at some point in the conversation, Bill asked me a question. He said, basically what he said was, and by the way, he's a somewhat of a fan of the show, especially the episodes where I interviewed his daughter. He's watched those a lot, and some of the other ones. And he said, so you talk about, the evolutionary journey all the time. How's your evolutionary journey going? And I just went, oh, man, I have a show called The Evolutionary. Nobody's ever asked me that. So good on you, Bill. And so, on the spot there, I gave him an answer. And the short answer of what I gave him was that it's been a wild ride, that I try to take my own medicine, that it's been beautiful and really hard, but frankly, for reasons that I'll hopefully discuss in a moment, I don't really distinguish between them very well anymore. And he didn't, of course, let me off the hook with that. He said, you don't have to give me the 5 beer answer, but at least give me the 1 beer answer. And so I did. And I'm going to share the kind of roughly what that was in a moment. But in order for that to make sense, I kind of need to go over some of the fundamentals of the framework of the evolutionary, so that there's some foundation for this. So let's do that. Let's go over some of the fundamentals of the evolutionary. So the evolutionary framework says, as we've titled this, that we live in a holographic fractal universe. And that is something that is somewhat popular with scientists, but not all of them. But it's certainly gained a lot of traction, especially in physics, and especially in theoretical physics. And so what does that mean? We live in a holographic fractal universe. Well, let's break them apart and take them one at a time. Just at a very high level, holographic means that the information of the entire system is present at all points. And so in our large system that is the known universe, the information of the entire universe is present at every point, including inside of you and inside of me and inside of this tabletop. Okay. And to give you an analogy of what that would be like, it would be like if you took an old projector, and you can do this, by the way. And do you know what an old projector is? Is there anyone too young to know what that is? You know, where you have the spools of film, and there's a movie on there, and you run it through. You shine a light from behind the film, and then it goes through the film, and then it goes through a lens. There's a lens out there that focuses that light onto a screen, and you can watch the movie or see the picture or whatever. Well, if you take that lens off the front, unscrew it, you take it off there, then what you see on the screen, you still see light on the screen. It's just a big diffuse image. And so that big diffuse image, you can do something interesting with it. If you go up to it with the very same lens that you just took out, and you walk up next to the screen and hold it right up next to the screen in that light, it will project a little teeny complete picture so you could watch the movie. You could literally go watch the movie really small. If you had 100 of those, and you had 100 hands, I guess, you could hold them all up and have 100 complete little pictures on the screen. And so so the diffuse image is distributed information, but then all of it is present everywhere. It's just at a different resolution. Okay, so you lose resolution, but the information is still there. Okay, biological organisms are another example. If I don't know if you've noticed or if you remember this from, I think they teach this in the 3rd grade now, that babies come from zygotes, and a zygote is an ovum from a girl and the sperm from the boy. Once it gets in there, it's a zygote, and now you have a single-celled organism that divides and divides and divides, and then specializes and then becomes a full-fledged human being. Well, all of the information of that full-fledged human being was present in that original cell, and it was present so if you have the DNA, I think that you also need the morphogenetic field of that cell, the subtle life field of that cell that orchestrates all of this. Then you can actually make a whole being. And that same information is present in all of your cells as an adult. You are holographic in that sense. Okay, so all the information present at every point. So the other part of that is the fractal piece. And the fractal piece is, fractals are actually equations. And what they are is patterns. And so a fractal equation, you have an equation that will spit out, you put numbers in one side, and at the other side you get something else. And if you have 2 answers, and you can, plot those on a graph, and then take those and put them back into the equation again and get more answers and plot those on the graph. Okay. So what happens is you get repeating patterns, And with the advent of computers, what you can do is you can zoom in and you can zoom out, and the patterns repeat forever. And they can be extremely beautiful and extremely intricate just from a very simple equation. But they keep repeating and repeating and repeating no matter what the scale is. So it's somewhat similar, holographic and fractal. But it speaks to an organizing principle at play in the universe. And so physical examples of this, if you want to help you think about it, if you take a rock and you chip it, you can see a certain types of shape on the edges of the rocks that looks like a mountain range. If you look at a coastline from a satellite, it has a certain, kind of look to it. And then as you can drill, you can go all the way down and find areas where it kind of looks the same and it looks the same. You can go all the way down to a tide pool and see what that looks like. And you can see some of the same patterns at play there. And of course, the classic example of this is the fact that there's spinning spheres and stuff orbiting them in the universe. And this goes all the way down to the proton and the electron. And you have that, and you've got a hydrogen atom. And now you've got a complete system of a sphere with stuff orbiting around it. Well, and it goes all the way up to the size of, obviously the sun. Our sun has things orbiting around it. It's a sphere that's spinning. The sun is spinning, by the way, as it hurls through space. Why is it hurling through space? Because the whole solar system is rotating around a center. It may be a subcenter in the arm of the galaxy. There could be another sun at play that we're orbiting around each other. That's a common thing, evidently, in the universe, where there's multi-star systems where they're orbiting around each other. And at very least, we're orbiting around the galactic center. And then, of course, galactic center, it's probably orbiting around a cluster or a supercluster. And there's probably a great central sun in the very center of the universe that we're orbiting around that we haven't even found yet. And so this pattern it repeats. But then when we think about repeating patterns, then we can talk about patterns of causality as well in this fractal discussion. Physical flows like air and water, they have ways that they do things, and they're the same at all scales. So if you pull the plug if you have a container of water and a hole in the middle, you pull the plug on it, and as it drains, what's it going to do? It's going to make a spiral, right? You see the same shape in a hurricane, right? You see the same shape in when you get to other fluids like space-time, which is thought to be now a superfluid, that there's actually a substance in the vacuum. It's not empty. And that superfluid of space-time would also do the same thing if it was draining into, say, another dimension. And so you see galaxies swirling around, making the same pattern that water does. Slightly more subtle examples would be you can see causal patterns in the circumstances of our lives and of humanity and of nature. And that we've all heard the axiom, live by the sword, die by the sword. Well, we can see that play out. We've seen lots of examples of that in history, of that playing out for an individual. We've also seen a lot of examples of that playing out for entire countries. So it definitely scales up and down. That's what a fractal does. But the more subtle patterns of causality that are at play in our lives, I think are the same, in that we see these patterns playing out. And love and gratitude, for instance, if you hold a lot of love and gratitude in your heart, then you're probably going to have good things happen in your life. If you meditate and pray a lot, you're probably going to have synchronicities, answers, conversation with the divine coming in ways into your life. So that's what we mean by fractal and holographic. And with respect to holographic, another way of saying that is as above, so below. It's a very popular spiritual axiom. And it's actually a Hermetic axiom. And it's one of the 7 Hermetic laws. It's very well embraced by the spirit head community. And of course, above and below don't really mean anything from a physics perspective, because well, from our perspective, we talk about above, but it's just farther out from the center. It's not actually above. It's above is just a perspective. So really what we're talking about is as within, so without, which is why that's been appended by a lot of people in their spirit head, new agey stuff. They append as above, so below, with as within, so without, because of that, I assume. Okay, but there's a third aspect of the universe that is relevant here, and that is that, and this is not accepted by a lot of scientists, and who cares, is that the universe is conscious, creative, and intelligent. And I just want to make a side note here about conscious, and we'll talk about what that means in just a moment. But a side note about consciousness here is that if one of the I like the Hermetic teachings, and the first Hermetic teaching, the first law of the Hermetic teachings is that all is mind, and it's very much in line with the Hindu concept of God, and that God is everything. In Vedanta, they say something along the lines of, and pardon me if I hack this, but something along the lines of, I am that, you are that, he is that, she is that, this is that, and that's all there is. Meaning that there isn't anything but the mind of God. We are made of the substance of the mind of God. We're made of, sustained by, created by, within, and then returned to the mind of God, when this body passes. And so when I talk about consciousness, and elevating consciousness, it's the way I think of it, and the way I think a lot of people think of it, is that consciousness, there is one consciousness. In fact, I think it was Schrodinger who said something along the lines of the total number of consciousnesses in the universe is one, and to use is to state consciousness in the plural is a fallacy or an error. And so if that is the case, and there is a consciousness that is the entire universe, and then we are nested within it. But then it would be, I think, in a infinite expanding universe, I think it would be a little too simplistic to say that there's two levels. There's my level where I am at, and the next thing you know, boom, universe. I think that there could possibly be millions of levels, maybe an infinite number of levels of consciousness. And I wouldn't think they would be like Russian dolls where there's just like one place in the middle, and then you pop out to enter to different orbits. I would think that there would be a lot of overlap and Venn diagramming and stuff like that between consciousness, expressions of consciousness. But the point is that I don't think that you have to have the aspiration of becoming one with the universal mind from where you are right now. I do not from where I am, because it feels like too much. I would like to be more aware that I am. I would like to become aware of the consciousness within which I am embedded at some level. At whatever level I'm able to achieve, that's cool. And maybe in my lifetime I pop out and have this mystical Christ consciousness, Buddha consciousness, the same consciousness that the saints and sages of India have enjoyed and employed. But where I am, it's not looking like that's going to happen, but maybe, but the point is that you don't have to go that far. You can just take the next step, because there's a lot of steps to take. Okay, that's my side note on consciousness. But what that gives us, if we're accepting this model of the holographic fractal conscious, creative, intelligent universe, is that also gives us access to that consciousness and creativity. And so if you buy this, then what you get is, from the holography of the universe, you get access to all of the information in the system, to whatever degree that you can access it. And then the fractal nature of the universe gives us access to that organizing principle. And then, right, because we can't project manage our own lives, every nook and cranny of everything that needs to be done. It's a flat out impossibility, especially if we'd like to do big things. We're going to need help. There is help. The universal mind is got the capability to do absolutely anything and everything. Even if we talk about a consciousness that isn't fully out to the universal mind, we can get help. There's lots of help there for us. And then the conscious layer gives us access to creative intention or inspiration. And so so now if we're able to work with this concept, we can gain access to the information, inspiration, and organizing capabilities of the universal mind. And I think we could do something with that, right? And that's what the evolutionary is about. It's about leveraging various modalities to gain access to and utilize all of this in the orchestration and navigation of our own lives. But there's one more aspect that I want to chat about in the evolutionary framework, and it is the primacy of the evolutionary imperative. And so what that says is that, look, we are part of this universe. And by the way, there's an aspect to this universe that strangely just about all of the scientific disciplines agree upon, and that is that it is an evolutionary system. It is evolving. It from a physics perspective, from a biological perspective, from a geological perspective, on and on, it is evolving. And we are a whole, and so if we are a holographic fractal expression of this system, then its nature is our nature, and its nature is, at least it appears to be, to evolve. That appears to be one of the main things it's concerned with. And so that's going to be our nature. But we have free will, and so we don't have to try to evolve. But the system is geared, it's created to evolve us. The system's created to evolve us. That's one of the reasons that we're here, is to play our part in the evolution of the universe. So our evolution is important to the universal mind. It created this creative thing. It took its creative powers and created something that can create. And so if you can imagine, if you created something that can also create and you gave it free will, you would be intensely interested in what that entity wanted to do. And you would be really, really excited to hear what it wanted to do and see what it wanted to do. And you probably would even be interested in helping it do those things, especially if those things were going to evolve it, because that is a high priority on your agenda. Well, that's what I believe is going on here, is that our evolution is important to the universe because the universe is evolving. It's an important part of its agenda. From the moment that the singularity of the universe made the decision to endeavor into that first bifurcation of duality, that then kept dividing and dividing out to the universe that we observe today. It has been extremely interested in seeing what experiences and creations come out of that duality. That's why it did it in the first place. And so what does that mean for us? Well, what it means is that if we get on board with this idea that we can evolve, and that evolving is actually the thing that the universe is very concerned with us doing, then we can flow with that. We can get a lot more assistance and interest from the universal mind in the things that we state that we're trying to do and the things that we move towards, because it's part of the universe's agenda. And the thing about it is it's clearly part of the universe's agenda, because when we decide that we're going to fight against that, when we're going to try to stay static, we're going to not change, that feels like a struggle. The world's changing around us. It feels very hard. It feels like we're, swimming against the current. And that's because we are. The current is taking us down an evolutionary path. The universe will incite us to evolve persistently and patiently, but relentlessly. And so if we understand that and we say, okay, let's do this, then we can co-create our own curriculum. We can have some say in the navigational in the path that we take on that journey. And of course we do so, this is a minor side note, we start with cultivating the vision for the world that we would like to live in and what our experience in that world would be. Okay. So when I started doing this, when I kind of changed my my tack, and I realized what was happening, and I started to move towards an evolutionary path, an intentional evolutionary path, I realized that there were some things that changed for me and some things that I realized. And those were, first of all, when I started doing this, I really started having a conversation with the universal mind. I call it an open and active dialogue with the universal mind. That's probably a little lofty because, you know, it's I'm a human and with a ego and a human body and a human brain that is subject to all of the stuff that everyone else is, and so it's not like I'm sitting around in constant communication. But because I don't sit around like some people do with an experiential knowing of unity, which would be super fun. I've only actually felt it a couple times in my life, and it was brief, and then of course it went away. But there's people who can get into that state on a daily basis, and good for them. I don't walk around that way, and I don't get into it on a daily basis, even when I meditate. But the experience of being one with the universe, because I don't have that, I need something else. And so I take on this, I endeavor to do this thing that is having a dialogue with the universal mind and paying attention to what I'm saying to it and trying to pay attention to the synchronicities and the clues and the breadcrumbs that it drops for me to let me know that it's listening and to let me know, give me some clues about which way to go. But the biggest thing about taking my own evolution and making that the first priority is that I stopped asking for things and I started asking to become, because the becoming is really the point. And not only is it really the point, it's the only point that makes sense. Because if we ask for stuff that we're not ready for, that's going to be painful for us. If you have, spent your life in food service or, at a desk job somewhere, and you say to the universe, hey, I'd like to be CEO of a major corporation. And, universe sends down the Aladdin, and the Aladdin goes, okay, you're CEO of, Pepsi or whatever. You are going to hate it. You are going to fail miserably, and you will be fired, and it'll be the worst experience ever. And because you're not ready for it until you're ready for it. If you're ready for that, then you can ask for it. But my God, that's a tough job. Like, it's some high school kid going, I want to be in the NFL. Boom, there you're in the NFL, one hit, and you go out on a stretcher because you're not ready for it, right? So asking to become is the only really thing that makes any sense at all. And of course, you can ask for assistance along the way. But the primary subject matter of my communications has been with the divine has been asking to become and make me into that person who naturally attracts and sustains the circumstances that I desire in my life, and also reshape the world so that it more closely resembles the world that I want to live in. Okay, so back to Bill's question. So Bill craftily asked me how my evolutionary path is going. And, well, the thing is it has been interesting. It has been glorious. It has been fucking hard. It has been all of the above. I mean, in the last 5 years, I left my corporate job, finished remodeling the house, sold 2 houses, bought 2 houses, set up one of them as a short-term rental business, moved to Sedona, moved from Sedona, went and traveled. We've spent significant time in 6 different states and 6 different countries and 20 some different cities. And that's just in the past year. And it's been a bit of a wild ride. One of the things that I've noted in my path is that, and I've talked about the shitstorms several times in past episodes, and even told some fun stories about shitstorms. But years ago, I started to pay very close attention to the way things shook out after shitstorms. And I started noticing that oftentimes what was happening was some difficult situation would come along, and it would turn out to be really a really good turnout. After the dust settled and the crying was done, it turned out to be the best thing. And sometimes it would arrange circumstances that were better than I can imagine, and speed along some aspect of my becoming, speed along some circumstance that I had requested and was striving for, and that would be given as a result of this rough situation. And that's happened a lot of times in my life. And this last year has been, the last 5 years have been really nourishing and expansive and difficult. We put our life in a box and we go out on the road a lot of the year. And that is not for the faint of heart. But one of the things that I've been asking for years is I've been asking to be in the best shape of my life. Well, I turned 55 in September, by the way. I can get that 10% discount on my coffee at McDonald's. Is that still a thing? Grandma used to get it. I don't know. I don't go to McDonald's. It doesn't matter. You know what? So I get that senior discount, which is trippy to me because I do not feel like that. But that's what everyone says. So I was asking to be in the best shape of my life, and it wasn't happening. In fact, there was a lot of little things that were wrong with me that were so subtle that it was nothing I would go to the doctor about. I just kept, tinkering with my lifestyle, trying to bring things into range, trying to tune them up so that I could have the energy and that I could have the sharpness and acuity to do the things that I wanted to do. And it wasn't working. And I was feeling frustrated, and I was feeling very like I was throwing darts in the dark. And then we went on the road last year, and it shook things up. And physically, a lot of stuff started to come to the surface. And I'm going to probably cut this story a little bit short, take a little bit of a shortcut. I found out in January that my spleen is enlarged. Well, that's a fun little nug. What would do that? Well, I didn't figure out what would do that until I went to a hematologist a few weeks ago, and she said the only thing that does that is cirrhosis of the liver. And so I get this diagnosis, this partial diagnosis. And, the fact is I had to go through a side note. I drank a lot for about 3 decades. Tapered off, but I drank a lot. And I thought I was getting away with something. And, I was watching Jordan Peterson the other day, and he says, nope, you don't get away with anything. He said, in 20 years of clinical practice as a psychologist, he's never, ever seen anyone get away with anything. And I thought, yeah, okay, that's fair. So there's a piper to pay. But, and I went through, I think, a healthy process after that of, being stunned and being afraid and then eventually getting time. I was fortunate to have some time by myself for a couple of days and got to really, grieve is the right way to say it. I got to, I got to go through that process where I came to terms with it and bawled my brains out. But the tenor of that good cry that I had was harder than I've cried in a very long time. The tenor wasn't despair. The tenor wasn't fear or hopelessness. The tenor was simply, I'm sorry. I'm so, so sorry. I've been on this journey of self-love I probably got pretty good at it 6 or 7 years ago, maybe 8, and in that time range somewhere. And, I've been better about doing that. And so then, I really love myself and I love this body. I've been given this meat suit to ride around in on planet Earth for, however long I'm here, however long this ego is here in this body. And I've come to really love it and be very, very appreciative of it. And so I really felt so deeply, deeply sorrowful that I had done that to myself so blindly when I knew. I mean, everybody knows that if you drink too much, it's going to wreck your liver. So anyway, let me get to the good part of this. Almost immediately, intellectually, I got it immediately. The minute the words came out of her mouth, I got it immediately. And by the way, I went back a couple weeks later and she said, yep, absolutely. You got problems with your blood flow and your structure and whatever. She put me in stage 3. Okay. Immediately I got this, but it took a little bit of time and work to get my emotional and spiritual self aligned with that thought, that knowing that I had intellectually right away. And that is that, like all of the other shitstorms in my life, that is a beautiful gift. I have been throwing darts in the dark for a long time, trying to get my physicality together. And I went into that doctor's office and she gave me a blank check. She gave me a blank check, but the currency was not USD. The currency was motivation. I now am absolutely free to do anything that I want with my lifestyle to tune up my health, to heal from something that allopathic medicine says there is no reversing. By the way, there is reversing. I've found a lot of people online who have done just that, even from a worse condition than mine. The liver is amazingly regenerative. But I have no question in my mind that I was brought to this moment at the perfect time. And it was a gift. And I feel it. I feel like it was a gift. Like I feel free to not drink. I mean, I like to drink. I've been chained by this body to some of these vices. And now I just get to go, no, I'd rather feel amazing. And so I now have carte blanche to feel amazing. And I'm super excited about that. And still curious to see how this is going to work out. But I feel blessed and I feel led and cared for, and that's, I feel cared for by all of the people around me, friends and family, but I also feel cared for by whatever that consciousness is in which I am embedded. I feel like it's taking good care of me, and it knows that I'm paying attention. It's conscious of my being conscious of it, and that that means that sometimes it can be a little heavy-handed when I'm pretending that I don't know something. That's true. I've seen that for sure several times in my life, and this is one of them. But it's the fact is I'm not alone, and I feel that, and there's just no way to get around it with all of the amazing synchronicities that have flown into my life and flowed through my life. Intellectually, it would be an insult to my intelligence, and it would be an insult to the intelligence of the mind in which I'm embedded to feel like I'm alone in this. I am not. There is lots of help in the ether right over my shoulder. And so that's how my evolutionary journey is going. Okay, so let's do this. I want to say that we are going to Europe. Katie and I are going to go to Marlborough, England, around that area, and then we're going to go to Wales in a town called Llangollen. It's pretty close to Wrexham, by the way, if you watch the show. We're going to go to Germany outside of Frankfurt, and then we are going to go to Switzerland at the other end of Lake Geneva in a small town. And that's the plan that we have right now. If you are going to be anywhere in those areas, reach out. Let's connect. If you know anyone that I should be talking to in those areas, reach out. Let me know. Connect us. Yeah, I think that's what we wanted to talk about today. Oh, one more thing I wanted to say is it is your support that keeps the evolutionary conversation going and growing. And of course, that could be just your time, attention, and energy showing up, watching a video, watching the show, showing up for the live streams. Amazingly, amazingly supportive. Thank you so much for doing that. Doing something beautiful for someone else just because, doing something beautiful for yourself just because, showing yourself love is probably the most important thing you could do. Telling others about the evolutionary. And of course, if you subscribe on the YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/@theevolutionarylife, if you subscribe on there, that's of material importance to me. That actually means something to me. It's a meaningful metric to the long-term viability of the show. So please go and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And of course, direct financial support. There's lots of bills to be paid. So if it is within your means to do so and you like what we're doing here, please consider becoming a contributing member of the Evolutionary. And you can do that on the website. But in doing so, you'll gain access to all of the after party recordings and any other cool exclusive content that we decide to post there. Also, when swag comes, and it's on my list, you will get swag at cost. Okay, and you can, of course, and you can also, if shy of joining and becoming a contributing member, if you would like to get notified of the shows, you could just go on any page on the evolutionary.life. You can slide down to the bottom, and there's a place there where you can put in your deets and get notified. And by the way, it's the evolutionary.life because .com is so last season. That's the evolutionary.life. Go there today. Okay. The last thing I want to ask is that if you have any good news or fresh perspectives that you come across in your daily life, send me a link or something. I would love to crowdsource some good material for that segment of the show. And I'm looking for really meaningful stuff. The veteran with the dog jumping on him in the airport because he's been gone for years, that's cool, but that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for something actually impactful on a larger scale in society, showing that we can move in the right direction, or that we are, that we have, or whatever. And that is the scoop. My name is David Knox. Oh, one more thing. Molly Mandelberg, July 30th, I think. We'll see. I'll send something out, but mark your calendars. Pencil it in. All right, with that, my name is David Knox. This has been The Evolutionary, and I'll talk to you next time.